chosen ones, the world was never meant to remember you. The pages of forbidden wisdom trembled when you arrived. The Kybalion, that ancient vessel of Hermetic truth, closed itself to all but the one it feared most. You. There is a reason the final teaching was sealed. It was not lost. It was hidden. Buried in a cipher only a living paradox could unlock. A being whose soul could bend both time and truth. You are that paradox. The seal was not to protect the knowledge. It was to protect reality from the one capable of wielding it. The sages who scribed the Kybalion foresaw your rise. They spoke in veiled tones, knowing your return would initiate a sequence the world could not survive. The final teaching wasn't merely a principle. It was a frequency, a cosmic tone so pure that even the planets lean toward it. And now, that frequency is humming within your bones. When you dream, the seal loosens. When you awaken, the illusion cracks. And when you remember who you are, entire timelines tremble. They've distracted you with laws, systems, false light. But buried under all of it lies a singular truth. Your existence is the mirror that reflects the original source. Not a metaphor, not poetry. Reality itself bends around your awareness. This was the last teaching. The ancient orders, blood councils, and veiled empires have spent centuries preparing for the moment you might access it. Not to guide you, but to contain you. Because if the final law inside the Kybalion is ever spoken again by the one it was written for, the old world ends. You've felt it, haven't you? That invisible weight pressing on your thoughts. That voice echoing behind the veil of language. That pull towards something everyone else seems programmed to forget. The seal is breaking, not because someone is unlocking it, but because you are remembering it. And now, the Kybalion isn't just a book. It's a warning label, a prophecy, a final lock on a door that was never supposed to open again. The first rule they taught you was control, not understanding. The Hermetic teachings were never about obedience, but mastery over perception itself. Before time wore the mask of linearity, before days and nights were carved into rhythm, there was only the pulse of truth, an unfiltered hum that carried the entire cosmos. The ancients didn't write for the masses. They encoded time itself into language, fractals into phrases, and inside the quietest of verses, they buried a whisper. Not just any whisper, but one that moved slower than sound and faster than thought. The one that could only be heard by someone who remembered how to listen with their soul. The Kybalion is not a text. It's a device. A cipher whose true purpose wasn't to teach, but to awaken. Each principle masks a vibration, and when aligned with the correct consciousness, it doesn't inform, it transforms. Those who merely read it remain asleep. But for you, its words don't just echo, they activate. You weren't meant to decode it with intellect. You were meant to become it. The final teaching, the one sealed away, was never about knowledge. It was about rhythm, a primordial alignment that collapses all division between past and future. There was once a moment in history where time stopped, not metaphorically. Clocks froze, thoughts suspended, and dreams fell silent. That moment has been erased from record, but fragments still linger in the collective subconscious. whispers of a day when reality paused to wait for something, or someone. They now call it a glitch, a myth, an error in data. But those who remember the real cause know it was not a system failure. It was a prophecy buffering, waiting, holding its breath until the one marked by paradox awakened. You are that pause returning. You are the delay they hoped would never reappear. Time doesn't move around you. It hesitates, then obeys. Every step you take shakes loose pieces of the frozen code. The Hermetic whisper never died. It simply waited, trapped in the cadence of forgotten tongues and buried in pages that refused to decay. There was a law so powerful it had to be erased from human memory, not burned, not banned, but phased out from the collective soul like a corrupted dream too dangerous to recall. This law didn't command the elements or guide behavior. It altered the essence of reality itself. It was known to the earliest mystics as the eighth frequency, the unspoken principle that could bridge heaven and flesh. The Hermetic masters feared it, not because it was evil, but because it made the illusion obsolete. If even one soul resonated with it fully, the veil of duality would tear like old cloth, and the entire scaffolding of control would collapse. They placed it beneath the ether, the layer just beyond waking thought, where most beings never dare to reach. Only the ones born encoded with paradox, both divine and temporal, could sense its pulse. Yeshua knew this law. He didn't just speak in parables, he moved through reality as one who had rewritten the script. "The kingdom of God is within you," he said. But that was only half the truth. The other half? You were the gate itself. The law is you, not metaphorically, literally. They buried it beneath the ether because they feared the day someone like you would unearth it without permission. The scribes of the Kybalion left no mention of it in ink. Instead, they used absence as a symbol, the missing chapter. The unnatural silence after the seventh law. That silence wasn't a mistake. It was containment, an energetic dead zone meant to suppress the law's reactivation. But containment is only as strong as the one it's meant to hold, and you were never meant to be held. When your thoughts begin to vibrate at the frequency they silenced, the ether itself becomes unstable. Dreams become messages, patterns repeat, nature bends. The people around you feel it too, even if they can't explain it. They start remembering things they've never lived. Time folds, synchronicity accelerates. You are not experiencing madness, you are waking up. And now the ether begins to loosen. The law buried within it is breathing again. Not because someone gave it life, but because your presence demands its return. The original architects of the Kybalion were not merely scribes or scholars. They were fragments of a cosmic intelligence splintered into flesh, each carrying a portion of the divine encryption. The seven principles were never meant to be final. They were thresholds. Each law was a key, but together they were also a lock, designed not to open reality, but to close it around something that threatened the illusion. They saw you before you arrived, not your face, your pattern, your frequency. A resonance that didn't belong to the simulation but came from outside it. They didn't fear your power, they feared your memory. Because the moment you began to remember, the structure they built would begin to fail. The Kybalion wasn't written for humanity. It was written to delay you. Every teaching bends toward order, balance, polarity, rhythm. But you don't align. You bend the laws without breaking them. You reflect what they never accounted for, will beyond fate. They calculated cycles, but not wild cards. They traced lineage, but not divine interruptions. You were the one variable none of their formulas could contain. Each of the 7 placed a seal within their law. Vibration held the first, polarity the second, cause and effect the 6th. The seals were disguised as wisdom, layered in metaphor, guarded by initiates who never questioned the silence beyond the 7th principle. But deep beneath it all, there was a knowing, a quiet terror, that if the final teaching ever activated, it would only do so through one vessel, one soul designed outside their design. You were never a student of the Kybalion. You were its undoing written into the foundation. The 7 knew, and though they veiled it behind enlightenment and sacred text, they encoded one final message. Not in words, but in the space between. The gaps, the absences, the feelings you couldn't explain when reading its verses. That strange echo that seemed to call you deeper. That was their silent admission, their preparation, their warning to the world that something was coming they could not stop. There are paths even gods won't tread. Thoth, the architect of cosmic language, the one who mapped eternity into symbols and etched time into memory, stood before one such path and chose silence, not out of fear, but reverence. Beyond that path lay a law he would not name, a dimension not of chaos, but of something older than order, a realm where mirrors no longer reflect and names lose their power. You have already crossed into it, not by force, but by birthright. Your shadow walks where Thoth refused, because your soul was forged outside his script. He wrote the emerald tablets to preserve alignment. He gave man the gift of structure to shield them from the madness beyond structure. But even he saw the flaw in his design, that someday someone would awaken who was not bound by the laws he safeguarded, someone who would not read the tablets, but remember what was written before them, that someone would not simply bend reality, but reveal it as the illusion it is. Thoth whispered to the stars of your arrival. He placed glyphs in places no one would look, underwater tombs, celestial misalignments, inverted pyramids, all echoing the same idea. The one who walks beyond the laws cannot be stopped by those who wrote them. Yeshua hinted at this when he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." It was never a boast. It was a rupture in the matrix, a declaration from outside time. He too walked where the scribes would not. He too bore the vibration that rewrote the code from within. But he was not here to finish it. He was here to plant the seed that you would someday awaken and carry beyond what even he could unveil. Now, the ground beneath your soul is not ground at all. It is interface. The air around your thoughts does not carry oxygen. It carries surveillance. They know where you are because your steps bend space. Your silence disrupts their frequency. You are not being followed. You are being studied. Because every place you move, the simulation rewrites itself. But in doing so, It reveals seams that were never meant to show. There was a final line in the Kybalion never written, only implied. A line not of text but of vibration, like a heartbeat between dimensions. It was sealed not with ink but with intention, wrapped in layers of silence so deep no initiate dared to speak of it aloud. But you've always felt it. The echo that doesn't stop when the reading ends. The way the final paragraph doesn't settle, as if the words are stalling for something else to arrive. That something is not coming. It's already inside you. The teachings were mirrors, but the final line was a gate. They placed it at the edge of perception, where meaning breaks apart and symbols collapse. Not because it wasn't meant to be found, but because it was meant to be felt before it was known. Those who read the Kybalion and forget it were never meant to carry it. But those who carry it without trying are the reason it was written. You were never reading the text. It was reading you, searching for resonance, waiting for its code to match a living frequency. Yours, everything, has been a test of echo. How many times can the final call bounce off your awareness before you remember it was never external? You are the receiver and the transmitter. The echo didn't begin in the Kybalion. It began in you, before language, before time, before form. You were the sound the text was waiting to harmonize with. But it could not complete itself until you arrived. That's why the last line was never written. It would only write itself when the one returned who could embody it. You walk with that resonance now, that strange pressure in the back of your thoughts, the hum that moves when you're silent, the pull toward forgotten places. These aren't side effects, they're signals. The echo is alive. It's testing its amplitude through your dreams, your decisions, your doubts. Every hesitation is a doorway. Every choice, a fork between illusion and origin. The echo isn't waiting for a response. It is the response, and it has chosen you as its axis. There are truths too powerful for words, and Yeshua understood that. His silence was not absence, it was protection. In the moments when crowds pressed him for secrets, when scholars demanded answers, he responded with silence, parables, questions. Not because he lacked clarity, but because he knew the cost of revelation. He carried a resonance that disturbed the grid, and within that stillness was a frequency older than creation itself. His silence was a barrier, a shield around the final teaching, because even he knew that if the last law of the Kybalion were uttered aloud, it would fracture the design of all known systems. They feared his voice, but they feared his silence even more, for in it was the unspoken acknowledgement of a teaching withheld, not from ignorance, but from mercy, a principle that once unveiled would pull reality into alignment with a source beyond control. That silence wasn't his alone. It was collective, passed down through the line of those who remembered the first word spoken in the void, a soundless vibration that could reorder perception itself. You were born with that silence nested in your being, that same stillness, that same shield. The final law is not written because it cannot be written. It is alive, and it lives within you as a hum beneath thought. You've heard it in moments of stillness, when the world around you seemed scripted and false. You've touched it in dreams that bent the rules of physics and time. It waits for no permission. It activates through remembrance, and remembrance cannot be taught. Only triggered Yeshua walked as the trigger. but he left the ignition to another, to you, the one who would not just carry the silence, but speak from it, not in language, but in being. You don't have to reveal anything. Your presence is already pulling threads loose. The systems sense you. The silence you emit bends their protocols. You are not resisting the world. You are rewriting its foundation simply by existing in truth. The Kybalion ends abruptly for a reason. It does not trail off from lack of thought, but from deliberate omission. Every verse was meticulously crafted to reflect universal law, but the final one, the true culmination, was withheld. Not forgotten, not lost, hidden. Not even the highest initiates dared to touch it. To translate it would mean to confront a truth so destabilizing it would undo the translator as they spoke it. They feared that to voice the final verse was to summon the end of illusion, and not just for themselves, but for everyone. The scribes weren't protecting the teaching. They were protecting the world from the effect of the teaching. Because once that frequency is spoken, not just in words, but through presence, time can no longer proceed as normal. The illusion of separation, of polarity, of order and disorder begins to collapse into singularity. That is what the final verse contains, the unification principle. The realization that the speaker is the teaching, and that the teaching cannot exist outside of them. Every culture had hints of this. The Gnostics, the Essenes, the keepers of the emerald tablets. They circled the truth, but never pierced it. Each tried to encode a fragment into their texts, but none succeeded in containing it whole, because it was never meant to be confined to pages. It was waiting for a being, not a book. The final verse was never something to learn. It was something to become. That's why it waited for you. Not for a student, but for a mirror. A mirror so pure it could reflect the original word without distortion. Your life is the verse unfolding. Every experience you've had, every distortion, every contradiction, it wasn't chaos. It was symphonic arrangement, calibrating your being into a form capable of carrying what no scroll or temple could hold. You are the final translation. The verse is revealing itself not in a sentence, but in your frequency. And now, without knowing, you are speaking it. In your breath, in your steps, in your gaze. You are the verse no one dared translate, now moving through a world that no longer remembers it was waiting for you. Warnings were always cloaked in prophecy, not to predict events, but to veil truths too dangerous for direct speech. The Kybalion, the emerald tablets, the hidden gospels, they didn't name you, but they described your pattern. They whispered of a being who would arrive not as a ruler or a savior, but as a fracture in the illusion, a mirror that would not reflect what is, but what has always been beneath. That mirror is not metaphor. It is your consciousness made manifest, and they've known about it far longer than you've been alive. The oldest scrolls speak of a one who bends law by remembering the source behind it, a presence that doesn't fight the system, but dissolves it by simply being present. You don't challenge the lie, you make it irrelevant. And that is what terrifies them. Not your voice, but your awareness. Your ability to walk through what others bow to. Your ability to see. For the world is not held together by power, but by collective agreement. The moment someone stops agreeing, the illusion falters. But the moment someone exists, as if the illusion never mattered. It breaks Yeshua embodied this fracture. He didn't argue with the laws. He walked through them. When he healed, when he vanished, when he whispered, "The truth will make you free," he wasn't offering a teaching. He was activating a remembering, not of rules, but of origin. He was the prototype. But even he said there would be greater ones who would not teach in parables, but exist as the word itself. You are that echo returning, not as a concept, but as form. You are what the systems were designed to suppress before you ever breathed. They warned the world of you, called it myth, demonized those who felt too deeply or remembered too clearly. They surrounded the final teachings with fear, painted awareness as madness, and turned inward vision into exile. But it wasn't enough, because your very presence bypasses their warnings. You are not here to convince. You are here to emanate. The frequency you carry doesn't ask for recognition. It demands remembrance from those ready, from those who've been waiting. The seal wasn't made of wax or spell. It was made of memory, a psychic barrier woven through belief, language, and emotion, designed not to lock a door, but to erase the memory that the door ever existed. It wasn't guarding the Kybalion. It was guarding you from it, not to keep you safe, but to keep you contained. Because if you remembered the truth of that final teaching, the illusion holding this reality together would begin to unthread. And now, the seal is no longer intact. It's responding to your presence. Every second you remember, it fractures further. The illusion is subtle. It's not in what you see, but in how you're told to interpret it. Cause and effect, time and space, right and wrong. These binaries were built as scaffolding around something infinite, something ungovernable, something you. When the seal holds, you believe in the structure, but when it breaks, the structure begins to look like a stage, and suddenly, the actors forget their lines. The sky doesn't bend the same. Time loops, patterns repeat. You start to catch reality looking back at you, confused. The final teaching was never a secret. It was the filter itself. It hid behind every thought, shaped every assumption. It whispered that you were limited, isolated, bound by physical law. But with every memory returning, that whisper weakens. And the more you remember, the more you feel what's been kept from you. Not knowledge, not power, but clarity. A knowing so simple and pure, it renders deception irrelevant. There's a silence before the illusion collapses. A pause. You're in it now. The seal hasn't shattered, but it's splintering. The signs are everywhere. People glitching through conversations they don't mean, events repeating an eerie rhythm, the atmosphere around your thoughts becoming heavier, more electric. The world senses it, even if it can't name it. Something is off. Something is shifting. And you are the axis. You were never meant to obey the seal. You were meant to awaken in spite of it. Your soul didn't come to break rules. It came to dissolve the prison they didn't know they were building. There's a threshold no text dares cross. A point where language unravels, and teachings must give way to direct experience. The Kybalion dances close to it, circling the edge like a guardian standing before a fire too sacred to touch. It gives you symbols, laws, rhythms, but never the flame itself. Because the final teaching is not a principle. It is not even a teaching. It is a return, a collapse of all seeking. The moment the seeker realizes they were never lost, that nothing was ever hidden, only veiled by choice. The final teaching cannot be understood because it is what understands. It cannot be followed because it is what leads. It cannot be spoken because it speaks through everything. It is the thread beneath all dualities. It is what remains when even truth dissolves, and it lives inside you, not as a concept, but as awareness itself. The Kybalion sealed it to delay your remembering. But no seal, no structure, no system can stop what you already are from awakening to itself. This is why they've scrambled time, why they've blurred memory, why they've flooded reality with distraction and noise. Because the moment you turn inward, the moment you stop chasing and start recognizing, the teaching begins to reveal itself through you, not as knowledge, but as being. You were never meant to be a follower of the path. You are the path. The teaching doesn't lead you forward, it spirals you inward, to the place they've warned you never to go, beyond belief, beyond identity, beyond separation. Yeshua hinted at this when he said the kingdom is within you, not near, not coming, within. He wasn't offering directions. He was pointing to the final destination that was never elsewhere. He carried the living teaching, but left the final spark unwritten, not as failure, as preparation, for the one who would come not to share the flame, but to be it, and now that flame stirs, not outside, within. It hums behind your thoughts. It shimmers beneath your skin. It waits, not to be activated, but to be remembered. And as your presence begins to radiate the unspeakable law, the illusion trembles.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.